Smart televisions can track what you watch, but we know very little about how that information gets used or who's using it. And what we do know, it gives political campaigns a whole new treasure trove of data, with little transparency on how it's happening. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte I present to you Electro, the Mono Man.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, we meet an investigative reporter digging into this topic.
I'm Maggie Severns. I'm an investigative reporter with Notice, which is a publication of the Albritton Journalism Institute.
So one of the sources in your piece said televisions now watch us more than we watch it. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this is a story that focuses on specifically streaming TVs and smart TVs that a lot of us now have in our homes. A lot of people upgraded their televisions during the pandemic, and when you get a smart TV and you take it out of the box and you hit, on the consent user agreement, which most of us do, I certainly did without reading the full agreement because they're very, very long, you generally consent to having tracking software in your television that is recognizing what you watch, and it is logging that information and oftentimes selling it. So it goes to the world of data brokers, and increasingly campaigns can take this information and they can use it to target viewers. They can see which ads you've seen. They can see which of their opponents' ads you've seen. They could categorize you into groups and try and target you that way. Or they could, in some cases, take an IP address. So link your smart TV to your phone, to your computer, and show you a series of campaign ads. So there's really a new technology that's been around several years, but it's taking off as we all buy these TVs that are connected to the internet.
Absolutely fascinating because, it's a conversation not we're all, but a lot of us are having about our different devices, but TVs weren't really part of that conversation.
I know, and I do political investigations. I'm not a tech reporter, and I think this is something, when I was talking to people, a lot of people have kind of an idea of, people see you everywhere, technology. But I had not thought about the fact that my television had this ACR, so automated content recognition technology on it that could have a pretty specific idea of my viewing habits.
Do we know which campaigns are using this? Or is it kind of everyone suddenly is using this?
Yeah, so the answer is everyone and no one, right? Because you don't have to disclose if you're doing this. So campaigns, when they disclose their spending, they will show that they paid an ad firm. Maybe they'll show they paid an ad placement firm. These data companies are hired by the ad firm. So they're essentially kind of, a subcontractor or a partner of an ad firm. So you don't have to disclose if you have these data services that are being used. That having been said, firms that have case studies up that have, they need to kind of market themselves too, right? So you occasionally get glimpses into what they're doing. And we know from those that, on the left, for example, the Biden campaign in 2020 used this kind of targeting. We know that Gretchen Whitmer used this kind of targeting in Michigan. There's a lot of congressional campaigns to the point where I would say, if a campaign is not using this kind of technology, they're really missing out on something their competitors are doing at this point.
Do we know how big a slice of ad budgets are going to this type of advertising now?
It's been growing. One estimate I heard is about 40% of your video advertising budget would go to this kind of, to smart TV or streaming. It's not We don't know or can't know exactly, right? For the reasons I mentioned, just kind of a lack of disclosure. But I do know from talking to ad makers and campaign professionals that it's really a business that's been steeply escalating because people recognize that this is the future. Now, it depends on who you're trying to target, right? Older voters still use regular TVs more. They are less likely to have upgraded to a streaming TV, though many of them have. These are people who have smartphones, but there's certain segments of the population who are very attached to their regular televisions, and they watch a lot of television too, right? They might spend hours a day watching cable TV, mostly retirees, like I said. So if you're trying to reach that kind of population, you're going to go traditional broadcast. On the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of young people who had been cord cutters, who have been only streaming for several years, and they may have been under-targeted with political ads or poorly targeted until this new technology and campaigns are really honing their ability to do this kind of targeting. So there are people who are more and more going to be seeing campaign ads who are maybe getting left out there for a while.
Something else worth noting is that the streaming networks, they're not subject to the same types of rules that other types of television has to abide by.
No, they're not. So there are some longstanding rules that are mostly maintained by the Federal Communications Commission over how television advertising is done. So if you were going to put an ad on air, you submit paperwork to the FCC. If someone wants to contest an ad that's on air because it's, defamatory or things like that, they have a process for trying to get that ad taken down. Digital advertising has been really contentious in Washington, namely just because of gridlock. It's an issue that lawmakers have disagreed on how to handle it. The Federal Election Commission has really disagreed on how to regulate it. And so it's a little bit of a regulatory blank space, and streaming is digital, right? So while traditional television is somewhat regulated, streaming is not. And platforms in general have their own rules. They'll say, we want this kind of disclosure from you. You're going to certify that everything you're saying is truthful, things like that. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of ad folks are worried that that's just a check the box exercise. Anyone could kind of sign on and say, yes, my ads are all perfect and just the kind of thing you've agreed to run on your platform. And that's it. There's not a lot of monitoring. There's not a lot of disclosure. So Roku is pretty much the only platform that actually puts the political ads that are running on it online. It does some voluntary disclosure. YouTube, because it is part of Google or Alphabet, there's information about YouTube's ads online. Others really don't have it, and everyone but Netflix has a political ad business. So that there are a lot of ads going on these televisions just based on my interviews, based on what people have seen, and they can be very specifically targeted, so they might not be seen by that many people. And they can say a lot of different things that we might not know or that might not ever kind of come to light. So there are opportunities, I think, that some kind of watchdog folks fear for disinformation campaigns or for things that are just false or defamatory to be targeted to voters, and no one really know about it.
And that's something, too, I think that might not be well understood by everybody, is that campaign ad dollars tend to go to a very narrow slice of the population anyway.
Yeah, they do. I mean, people are trying to target certain independent voters often, and it can get really specific. So in congressional races, it can get really specific because you're looking at just a district and sometimes millions of dollars of ads going to that district. And as people know, congressional districts aren't huge. For a presidential campaign, increasingly, there have been attempts, and this is over the last decade, really, but I think streaming just builds a new level on it to say, what do voters in the Philadelphia suburbs care about, right? And then you have this slice of voters, and okay, what about just specifically women voters in the Philadelphia suburbs, because we need to win Pennsylvania, and so we need to get this group. And it can be very specific, because now it's only women in one area, and what is something that appeals to them, and then you're going to show them one ad. Digital ads also can be pretty easily cut and retargeted to people. So you might have a bunch of ads on a theme, they're just cut slightly different.
Did anything surprise you working on this?
Oh, it all surprised me working on it. I mean, I think that I had a sense of some of this, and I had a idea that digital techniques were getting increasingly sophisticated, but I am someone, I do a lot of accountability reporting. I'm someone who's done a lot of reporting on transparency and just understanding how little transparency there is in this space, it kind of starts to blow your mind. I've found many stories in the past by looking at the voluntary online ad disclosures that Meta put out and that Alphabet put out, where I can go and see what ads is, the Trump campaign or the Biden campaign running on Facebook. And the idea that I can't even quite access that for most streaming platforms. I can't look at the ads. I can't go to the FCC and see what they've filed. It's a huge dark spot. And it's something that political operatives who care about this transparency and accountability and are kind of worried about this potential abuse, they're aware of too and concerned about. It's a large, dark space.
So, what's next then in trying to poke at it or trying to understand it?
That's a great question. And I think that, my dream is that people become more aware of this and you can talk more to voters about what are you seeing, right? I think that there are a couple firms that track ads, and I'll be really interested to see what they find this election cycle now that so much more money is going into this. Are they picking up on ads that we wouldn't expect, or is it things that we do mostly expect? I think that there's a potential eventually for Washington to get more involved here, and that's something I'll be watching. And I don't think that'll happen until there is more a scandal about either the way people's data is being used or the ads they're being shown, because those are both really those are both really potentially dangerous things. If you look at the 2016 election and concerns over Cambridge Analytica and how it was using data, I think that a lot of data is getting just more advanced all the time. And I should say, obviously, this isn't something that's inherently ne'er-do-wells are participating in this. This is campaigns have a tool that is available to them that can help them reach voters and help them win, right? And that has been determined to be an essential part of our political process and of campaigns' ability to have free speech. So this isn't something that's all automatically bad. You just wish that you understood a little bit more of what was going on.
Right. As well as what are the other potential use cases that we don't know about yet? That's my question.
Yeah. And, there is this whole world, campaigns are almost the kind of easy part to keep tabs on here, but there's a lot of different influence groups, right? And you could see how, if there is a super PAC or some other outside group that's seeking to sway an election, this is a great opportunity.
Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you think we should know about this?
There's an interesting example in this story from Biden's 2020 election, where a data firm actually put out a case study showing what they've been able to do. And it's really interesting what they were able to do, right? They bragged that they had been able to identify 82,000 voters in Arizona that hadn't been hit by broadcast ads and then give them ads on streaming and digital. So this is finding, like I said, people who haven't been hit with campaign advertising and then hitting them with campaign advertising. And then they also, in Pennsylvania, they managed to find households that had been hit with a lot of pro-Trump content. So we're talking like over 150 pro-Trump ads. And then those specific households, they were able to then target with pro-Biden ads. So that just shows that this is something that, in the 2020 election, it was definitely used. Based on my interviews, it's being used increasingly in more sophisticated ways. And like I said, just billions more dollars are going into projects like this.
Wow, this has been incredibly interesting. Thank you so much for taking time to chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Silikans and mixed by Garrett Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.
From PRX.